Hello, Space Junkies, and welcome to What a Piece of Junk, the Star Wars podcast here on the Fandom Podcast Network. This is episode 156, where I will be joined by my original podcast co-pilot to discuss episode 3 of Star Wars Skeleton Crew, which is very interesting as an astrogation problem. But I can't do astrogation without Mr. Derrick Marsh. Derrick, how's it going?
It's going. It was a wet and cold one today, but I'm surviving it, and it's going to be super fun to talk Skeleton Crew episode 3. I'm really liking these series, but yeah.
Yeah, this episode was really cool and pays homage to some very classic Star Wars ideas and very classic Disney films, which we'll jump in and talk about as we are also joined by our third man in the booth, our very own Dave Filcloni, Gooey Chewy, the man of 1,000 nicknames, Mr. Miracle himself, Nathan Miracle. What's up, Nathan?
I am doing pretty well. It is a fine Sunday. It is, in fact, the 7th anniversary of the release of The Last Jedi. One of my favorite...
Gosh!
Yeah.
Has it been 7 years already?
Wow. It has, yeah. It is one of my favorite Star Wars episodes. I know that not everyone agrees, and that's okay. We can all have our own opinions on that.
Yeah, totally. I love the film. Initially, I had, some apprehension about it, but having seen it multiple times, it's really grown on me, and I think it's great. I can't believe it's been 7 years since that has come out. That means that we're quickly approaching the 10th anniversary of Star Wars The Force Awakens, pretty much the genesis of the new era of Star Wars.
Is that next year, or was that this year? Was that 2014?
I believe it's...
we've had
next year.
We've had the 10th anniversary of Disney's acquisition of Star Wars.
Yeah,
next year's 10th anniversary of The Force Awakens.
Force Awakens.
Yep. 2015 was the first one. So
that by the standard math means that we're about halfway towards a new trilogy, right? Every 20 years.
Actually, if you do the math for if you do the math for the time difference between episode 3 and episode 7, that was only like 10 years.
Mm-hmm. The 2005 to 2015.
Yeah. There was a shorter gap between the prequels and the sequels than there was between the originals and the prequels.
Yeah,
because that was 22 years, right? 77 to 99.
Yes,
and then it was 99.
Well, it would have been 83 to 99.
Well, I'm going from first movie to first movie.
Oh, from beginnings to beginnings. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Then you've been 2019 to. I'm sorry. 1999 to 2015.
15 would be 16 years, whereas it was 22 years from 77 to 99. Wow. So shorter. Yeah, if they just keep getting shorter, then we should have one real soon.
No,
indeed,
because they keep announcing it and canceling it. So
that's true.
Yep.
We'll have an announcement really soon.
And
in about 20 years, we'll have the actual movie.
I mean, we do know that they've officially filmed Mandu and Grogu movie, because that's a moneymaker. Yes. So they're guaranteed for that. So
that one, I believe.
So, and because it did come from Dave Filoni himself, and now he's starting to work on Ahsoka season 2. So
yeah. All right, but we're not here to talk about feature films. We're here to talk about Star Wars streaming series, and in this case, Skeleton Crew, Episode 3, very interesting as an astrogation problem. All right, Derrick, what did you like best about this episode?
I again just kept on par with the rest. I like how at least the characters, the kids in this episode seem to fit a bit better. Because you had what's his name? Kh'ymm. He was the one that would constantly like, but he's a Jedi, he's a Jedi.
Right.
And every other kid is just like, stranger danger.
Yeah, they're probably like, I'm not real sure he is a Jedi.
And Neil was like, I'll just go with the flow.
Yeah.
Typical Neil, like, he's like, can I get home in time for supper? That's about all I care about. So, again, it was fun. I do appreciate the sense and humor that Jod is portraying. Like, that's not a Jedi thing, and
Jedi never leave a man behind. That's not a Jedi thing.
First off, that's a droid. Second off,
and he's like, I don't want to get the droid, but then they're like, we're not leaving without him, and he's like, son of a, and then has to go back and get it, and then all of a sudden you just see, like, at least there's a couple of funny scenes there too, where the one guy comes in, he's like, oh, they let you out of prison. Oh, that's great. And then it's funny that it was like 2 days before your execution. And then it's like, I'm going to have to call this in.
Yeah. And I love that initiative as coming in there to be all like, Jod, who let you out of prison? Do you guys know who did the performance for that initiative?
Yes, I do. And
is that Mark Hamill?
Awesome. It is not Mark Hamill.
No, that would be great.
It is not a Star Wars name. It is, in fact, a Spider-Man name. It is Alfred Molina.
Yep.
Okay.
Dr. Octopus.
Dr. Octopus himself.
Yeah.
That was pretty cool.
And then obviously as he's like trying to escape them as they're all chasing him in the little like transporter craft, and he's just like trying to look through the little port thing because otherwise it's the little teens driving it.
Yeah.
And he's like, just go, and they're like, So I mean, otherwise, like I said, I thought again it was very on par. It was a good comedy episode. And again, it just felt the same momentum that we've gotten for the first 2 episodes. It felt on par.
Cool. I think my favorite thing, there are plenty of really great Star Wars Easter eggs that I mentioned already, but we'll talk about them when we get to question number 3. My favorite thing was the moment where SM-33, who we will just from now on call Smee and Jod are in the ship, and the Obsidian Cinder. Is that what it's? I think it's the Obsidian Cinder is the name of the ship. And Jod takes that Onyx Cinder. Onyx. That's right.
Very close.
Sorry.
Starts with O. Means black.
Got my black rocks mixed up. Anyway, and so Jod takes that knife out of the wall that was literally stabbed into a decayed, desiccated corpse, and he's basically like, I got a cool new knife. And he and Smee have this little, like, stare down about who's going to be in charge. Standoff, yeah. And Smee does the thing where he, like, raises up to his full height or whatever. And Jod is mildly impressed, but not really intimidated. It was just a really great space pirate moment, which is perfect for this show. So that was my favorite part of this episode. Nathan, what was your favorite part?
To kind of add on to yours, I also love the fact that the kids apparently didn't notice that there was a corpse with a knife just sticking out of it.
Yeah, you would have figured that Neil would have like freaked out at that thing.
I thought that they did. I thought that they did in episode 1 when they got aboard the ship or something, and I thought they found some skeletons.
Well, I think some skeletons, but I don't know that they found that one. And if they did, they certainly didn't do anything about it.
No, they didn't touch the knife.
So, like, we will talk about, I stabbed your previous captain and spilt her guts out, but that we're not going to actually do anything about that.
Right.
So my favorite part is because I was never sure that Jod was a Jedi to begin with. When I first saw him in the prison and he brought the keys to him, my first thought was, I'm not sure that he is actually a Jedi. He might be pulling some sort of trick. And my girlfriend Andrea, we were watching it together, and she was like, but he pulled the keys to him. I'm like, he could have had like string. And then in this episode, they're like, string? Like, see?
Magnets?
See?
Yeah.
See?
Yeah.
But they did question him about it. He's like, why didn't you just sneak out any time? He's like, because I need a ship. So
That's
at least
true.
it was like, smart talk.
He
you know
had
what I
a
mean?
reason. Yeah. On the other hand, he's also talking to a bunch of kids. He can probably outthink them. Yeah. So I'm still not 100% convinced that he's a Jedi. I do think he has some Force training and that he was actually using the Force there. So I think they're off base with the, he fooled us in some way. But I still think he's not a Jedi. But I hope we find out more about that going forward.
Well, didn't he say
I hope so too.
Didn't he say I never said I was a Jedi?
That's true. He did say that he never said he was a Jedi.
He did say that.
So, but your comment earlier though just got me thinking too about our whole thing about At Attin. who killed the pirates then? So if they landed and there's a rusty knife looking in there, I'm wondering if it was those droids that, you know, were looking for the kids. If they turned to, like, when strangers come from outside, was it the At Attins that killed them? Or was it something in mutiny and all that stuff once they found the treasure and it's in the ship the whole time and they just never knew?
I think it was a mutiny, but it went wrong and all of them died. Mm-hmm. Except and Smee got deactivated. And then the ship crashed.
Okay, I think they were trying to. They died before they were finding At Attin.
Right. I don't think they were even trying to find At Attin. I think this was a total accident. I think they just had a mutiny. They all died. Smee got deactivated. The ship just kept going forever and then crashed totally accidentally onto At Attin.
It definitely crashed on At Attin because we see the gulch that Kh'ymm basically falls into. And that was created by the crash.
I
let this be a lesson to you kids. Don't miss the bus to school because really bad things could happen.
Or really cool adventures if you're like Kh'ymm.
Yeah. This seems to have turned out well for them. Now their parents
for two of them. The other two are like
out.
Well, that was funny too. It's just like, don't worry, the droids will find them. They've left off. They're like, what? Let me talk to the what was the Supreme Chancellor? It's like, he's not gonna. It's gonna be like the whole Wizard of Oz.
The Supreme Chancellor.
It's gonna be fake.
And one of them was like, well, KB's life monitor, KB the cyborg girl, like her life monitor has stopped transmitting. Like, hold on, we're like, oh yes, I'm sure they'll be fine. KB might be dead, but other than that, they'll be fine.
Well, that was another Easter egg because we got that from
epic
Ewok.
Easter egg, epic Ewok movie shout out with the life monitor. So we'll get to that in a moment. All right, moving on to question number deuce. What did you like least about this episode? The thing I liked least about this episode was we didn't get a definitive answer as to how does Jod know Kh'ymm, the bird lady. Like, I wanted, we served together on this ship, or she used to be part of my pirate crew, or something like that. I wanted a better connection between the two of them, and, that may be on its way, because I expect that we'll see Kh'ymm again. She was way too cool of a character for one and done, in my opinion. But it remains to be seen exactly how they're connected, so I kind of hated that. And that was the thing I liked the least about the episode. So not that bad in the grand scheme of things. Basically, it left me wanting more, is what I'm trying to say. Nathan, what did you like least about this episode?
Yeah, so first off, I agree with you that we're going to see her again because you don't put a line in there like, you can call me anytime, and then just not have that come back up. So we will almost certainly see Kh'ymm again. That said, the thing I liked least about this episode is I felt like the main group kind of ended the episode in a similar position to where they began the episode. They got some new information, but we're still, okay, we're on the ship and we got to run, which is where they started, trying to get away from the pirates. So in that sense, this episode is almost like a bottle episode. Like, this episode could almost be taken out and that exposition added in somewhere else, which I think is not the greatest thing in the world. But I mean, we got Kh'ymm, so I can't complain that much. Yeah. That was a really cool character.
Yeah, she was great. Derrick, what did you like least about episode 3?
Again, this is just going to be recurring until I actually get something that I didn't like, and that is the runtime. Between the episode recap, which, let's be fair, we don't need episode recaps at the beginning of every freaking weekly episode. I hate that. And then on top of that, and by the time you get the credits, it was barely a 30-minute episode.
Right.
And this one actually was, to me, I get why episode 1 and 2 were put together, but they almost needed to put this episode together as well. Like, I think they should have dropped the first 3 episodes, because I feel like that would have maybe fit a little bit better. But again, we'll see how it goes and kind of how the story ends up moving forward. So, but overall, I mean, like I said, that was pretty much it, just because And I'll be curious once this is all said and done. I'm actually going to try watching this with Sophia and Christina and try to get it like kind of like all one go. Not necessarily, maybe we'll pick an afternoon and it'll probably only be 3 or 4 hours worth of TV viewing when you're all said and done. And I'm wondering how that, when I watch it that way, if it'll be better or not. Because again, this one to me almost feels like, again, where I'm usually pretty on par with wanting more episodes and series stuff, but this one almost feels like, is it almost too drawn out? It would be better as like a 2-hour movie. But again, right. I'll see when it's all said and done and watch it like kind of one long stream and see if that makes it actually flow a little bit better.
Yeah. You mentioned,
I think that'd be a cool experiment.
Yeah. You mentioned runtimes and that this episode should have been dropped with the first 2. They could absolutely have taken episode 2 and this episode and made them one full-length episode because the runtime for both of those episodes was fairly short.
This wasn't as bad as what was episode 3 or 4 of The Acolyte, where it was just walking. Wasn't quite that bad, but again, it was like episode 3 or 4 or 3 where they're just walking, and it's just like, come on, people.
Yeah, but this kind of goes back to my point. If they kind of start the episode in the same place that they end the episode, that's partly because they didn't have enough time to have too much stuff develop.
Yeah.
They're just
all right. Well,
stringing it out to get episodes. It's like, come on, don't waste my time. I want exposition, but at the same time, don't make it boring. But I mean, at least it's not boring. But that's
I kind of felt in a similar way about a few episodes of the Kenobi series, but part of that was because I already knew that it had originally been planned to be a film. Mm-hmm. And so you could kind of feel when they had inserted more stuff to stretch it out. Yep. And I got that feeling a little bit, too, with Book of Boba Fett, since that was rumored to have been a Josh Trank film back in the day.
Yeah.
And honestly,
anyways,
would have been better as a film, I think. They could have cut out a lot of stuff.
Or they could have cut out all of Mando season 2.5, like they should have originally, and actually gave him a full 7-8 episodes of fleshing out Boba Fett.
Yeah. All right, well, time for what I consider to probably be the meat and potatoes of this episode of the podcast, and that is the what connections did you draw to the rest of the Star Wars galaxy question about episode 3 of the show. Nathan, I'll let you go first. I'll bet clean up on this one because I've got so many I could talk about. But what do you got, Nathan?
Well, I'm actually not going to talk about that many. I am going to do a bit of speculation, though. One of the droids that we see is a B-1 battle droid, which is awesome. And of course, it's falling apart because B-1 battle droids are cheaply made and aren't going to survive that long.
Right? And this one would be pretty old at this point.
Yeah, and I love that it was just like, did we win? And then we got the reference to, missed the war, did you? When the kids were like, well, we learned about Alderaan. About that. Don't go there. So we got a couple of wartime things that the kids don't know about there. But particularly with the B-1 battle droid and Jod's attitude towards droids, it makes me wonder if he was around during the Clone Wars. Certainly, if we go by Jude Law's age and say that they're about the same age, he would be in his early 20s about the time the Clone Wars ended. So he might harbor some anti-droid sentiment from the Clone Wars, especially if he was in some way associated with the Jedi or the Republic. So I think that's an interesting possibility. And it makes me wonder about how he's treating KB, who is cyborg and thus a little closer to droid than the other kids are. And he's had kind of a couple of why don't you run some calculation kind of tiffs with her. So it'll be interesting.
He's basically looking down on her for being part machine in some ways, or if not looking down on her, at least treating her with some derision of great cyborg.
Or maybe she thinks she's really smart, and that's why he gave her the analytical stuff.
Could be. But at the same time, he is, despite having to look up to see Smee, is still looking down upon Smee and not.
Well, 100% for the droid. Yeah, no, I'm with you on the droid part, but cyborgs, he could look at a little bit differently. Like, to your point, he could be, but he could also be looking at her just like defect, right? Like her eyes don't work, because that's really all that mainly is that her eyes don't work. I'm assuming properly, and that's why she wears the visor.
Could be. I'm not sure,
because we don't know why she has it yet.
Yeah, we don't know all of her cybernetic accoutrement.
Yeah.
But we do know that her parents were worried about her because she needs special care. So the implication there being that she has some sort of disability that the cybernetics try to help compensate for, but her parents are worried because she might also have to take medicine, and she doesn't have her medicine with her. We don't really know.
I think they're just so uppity up. I think all her simple deformity is that she's colorblind or something stupid.
Maybe
she doesn't even
something
need
completely.
It. But
right.
Because she's not,
could be.
She's not normal. That's in the society, right?
So. In the At Attin society, I could absolutely see that being the case, and that means it could be not that she needs the medication for the same reason, for whatever the cause is for her needing the cyborg equipment. It could be that she needs the medication because she has the cyborg equipment. That could be causing side effects that she needs medication to alleviate.
She's allergic to Retinex implants.
Exactly. Which is why Dr. McCoy won't prescribe those to Admiral Kirk.
Totally. All right. Sorry, Nathan, are you done with connections?
I am done with connections. There are several more in the episode, but I will leave them to y'all.
Derrick, what you got for connections to the broader Star Wars galaxy from this episode?
Well, we got confirmed it was the Old Republic.
Yes.
And so that was great. And then
Old Republic, but not High Republic.
Correct.
Correct.
It's ancient, right? And it was these 9 major pillars. Everything's always these major societies, right? And you had Coruscant, At Attin, Alderaan, and I didn't get to see the rest of them. So we got these core pillar, things that had to be protected, and these were the functionings, kind of the 9 ruling families or planets, whatever you want to say, in the society of the Old Republic. I wonder if anyone will. I didn't go back and rewatch the scene, but when she pulled up the map real quick to show kind of the figure, it was Erebus or not. I don't know if it deciphered what those other ones were, because I'd be really curious to see if we get any like the made up stuff that we know of from the Old Republic video game, if those were more Easter egg spoilers or not. You guys haven't mentioned anything with that, so I'm guessing no one's bothered to do that, or it wasn't, and but I'd be curious to see what that was referenced to.
I haven't actually looked up to see if anyone has deciphered the Arabish. That's a good point.
I know someone has, at least for the text around the planets. I don't know that I've seen anything on the planets themselves, but the text around the planets is a lot of half phrases and nothing really substantial, nothing that you can really tell. Like this is this planet or anything like that. It's these are the 9 great pillars or stuff like that.
So anyways, and then there was like I said, in the Star Wars universe, but another Easter egg was the character, the pirate Gunter, who's played by Jaleel White, or good old Steve Urkel. And I love how he's
Steve Urkel or Stefan.
Stefan, which diversion, but he also has like a red eye, so he's still like kind of wearing glasses. And so, but they didn't have him like fall over and something, and like he couldn't get up or something. That would have been hilarious. But but anyways, but yeah, I mean, it's just like I said, there's all sorts of stuff. And then I know we haven't said it on the show yet, but there's a ton with the ships. I'm assuming, Scott, you have a list of stuff you're going to list off here in a second.
I've got at least 2. So, but okay. Go ahead, dude.
Well, I was just going to say, I mean, we've obviously, there's, the things that we just talked about earlier with, and Kevin had posted on the Facebook group. One of the ships was the original Ralph McQuarrie concept art for the Millennium Falcon, which looked more like the Carillion Corvette. Right. So that was really cool to see that one. You'll have one reference here, but just overall, like I said, there's all these little visual things and stuff like that. And I'm curious if I'm guessing I would be curious to see if Kh'ymm was a puppet or if she was all CGI. I would assume she's CGI because of her flying, but like when they're interacting with her, just like Grogu, I wonder if, that would be, because obviously when Grogu's doing a lot of the walking and stuff in the action scenes, he's CGI, but I was curious if that was a puppet or not, because that would have been something like Grogu, right? Where it's a majority puppet when they're interacting close up.
I would expect that Kh'ymm is most of the time a puppet, and she's only CGI on scenes where she needs to fly or freely move about,
Yeah.
Because the kids seem to be interacting with her, and so did Jude Law as a thing.
Yeah. So, but then I was curious who worked on the puppet, because if that was the case and it was an actual puppet, then to me it was outside of the Star Wars universe. But if it was a Jim Henson puppet, perhaps, or somebody that worked for the Jim Henson Studios, to me, I felt so much Ogra from Dark Crystal with Kh'ymm.
Yes.
So much with that, right? Like, she didn't say like she's 1,000 years old and all this stuff and the Great Junction and all that stuff, but obviously she's very wise. Haha. And
yeah.
And kind of the seeing, like the owl, sees everything, and that's where she has a giant telescope to see everything. So
her base was like an orrery,
symbolism,
just like yep.
The symbology, but yeah, no, just all, like I said, there was just a lot with that character. And again, I mean, back to Nathan's point and my point earlier about the runtime and just kind of the start pointing is the end point. But like I said, it was just as a cool interaction character, and like I said, there's just a lot of outside worldly story links that I could see influencing that scene and interaction.
Yeah, totally. All right, so the major. Go ahead, Nathan.
Sorry, I was trying to see if I could determine whether she was a practical effect or not, and I see some speculation that people think that she was primarily a puppet outside of the obvious needs to be CGI scenes, but I have not found any confirmation on that, so don't quote me.
Yeah.
The major Easter egg that I wanted to talk about was one of Jod's other aliases is Crimson Jack, who was a space pirate character in the original Marvel Comics Star Wars adaptations from the 1970s and 1980s. I about flipped my lid when she called him Crimson Jack, and I was like, oh my gosh, Richard Woloski, a friend of the show from Skywalking Through Neverland podcast, put up a picture of himself in their Facebook group cosplaying as the original Crimson Jack from several years ago, because they have a sub-series on their podcast of Skywalking Through Classic Marvel Star Wars Comics, which is a great Star Wars podcast for any OG Star Wars fans like myself, or people who want to learn more about the early days of expanded universe storytelling in the Star Wars galaxy. They go through issue by issue every issue of the original Star Wars Marvel Comics from the 1970s through, I believe it was 1985 when it ended. I'll have to look that up. And they do a great job of analyzing it, and for some reason, what do you got there, Derrick? Oh, yes, the picture of Crimson Jack. Hold on, let me
I guess
invigonate.
Now that is not the original Crimson Jack.
Yeah.
It's not.
That is another version, a newer version.
Yeah.
Yes, the original Crimson Jack, the one that Richard Woloski cosplayed, had a much different beard about him.
Let me find a picture.
Richard's cosplay is hilariously bad, because that was kind of the whole theme of Marvel Star Wars comics, is that they weren't exactly great and were often a pastiche of other works that were semi-related to science fiction, and sometimes not even related to science fiction. Like, they did a lot of Western stories that they retold through the lens of Star Wars, which is fine, because Star Wars was often called a Western in space. Chewbacca is kind of like a Native American sidekick to Han Solo's Lone Ranger. Let's be honest.
He's a dog.
Yes, right. Han Solo and his doggy. Anyway, that was a major one. Crimson Jack. I loved it. I do not think that this is going to be a case where they try to have it be the original Crimson Jack is, the dude from the original Star Wars Marvel comics. I think Jod has a better chance of just having used that alias, and this is sort of an in-joke for people my age to be all like, oh my gosh. Oh, wait, it looks like Derrick has found a picture of the original Crimson Jack.
That is the original Crimson Jack.
So as you can see, he wears less clothing and has more beard than the remake Crimson Jack, and certainly has more beard and less clothing than Jod Nanawood. Or whatever his real name is, because we'll get into that in just a second here. My second Easter egg, though, that I wanted to point out about Star Wars, and then I have a non-Star Wars Easter egg, which is really cool, is the pirate base, Port Borgo, when Jod and the kids are trying to escape here in Episode 3. One of the starships that you see in the background is the Starspeeder 1000 from the ride at Disney World Star Tours and Disneyland. The original ship that was used in the 1980s theme park ride can be seen in its orange-colored format in the plethora of vessels that are all hanging out in Port Borgo as Jod and the kids are trying to make their escape, and then they bust up the refueling thing. I can't believe how tough the connection was between the fueling line and the Onyx Cinder.
That's become a theme in Star Wars now, because in The Force Awakens, Finn and Poe had a lot of trouble getting a TIE fighter to disconnect from a fueling thing. And then in The Last Jedi, which I may have rewatched this weekend for purposes of anniversary, BB-8 is in the ATST, and he walks out. The top is attached to fueling things, and it just ripped the top of the ATST off. I don't know what connectors they use in the Star Wars universe, but they are strong.
Well, listen, if you're having to pump coaxium into something, we've seen the kind of effect coaxium can have when it goes off. So I would think that they had some kind of safety requirement so that the connections would be super tough to break, because you don't want fuel spills when your fuel is coaxium or derived from coaxium.
So we will break your ship before we let you spill coaxium.
I mean, to be fair, though, I mean, that's really, you don't want that because it will explode.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, it'd be bad. It'd be real bad.
So,
all right. Well, my third and final Easter egg that is not actually a Star Wars Easter egg, but certainly is a Disney Easter egg. We talked about the Dark Crystal and how Kh'ymm, the owl lady, reminded us of Agma. But other folks have pointed out that this character is very much influenced, or maybe even an homage to, Archimedes, Merlin's pet owl from the animated Disney classic from 1963, The Sword in the Stone. And if you look at her lair, where she's basically living amongst large stacks of library books, data slates, that's the same as Archimedes hanging out in all those stacks of books in The Sword in the Stone. And he even says, what? The same way that she goes, what? Mm-hmm. And flies around the place as she's doing research.
Think about that.
And so on and so forth. So I got this idea from Rafael Motomayor over at /Film. Yesterday, he published an article with the headline, Star Wars Skeleton Crew, Episode 3, pays homage to a fantastical Disney movie. And he goes on to talk about all of the stuff that, it references The Sword in the Stone, especially Archimedes. But then he also says that the entirety of Skeleton Crew, with all of these piratey references that we've been mentioning, like Mr. Smee and how basically we have a guy who is Long John Silver, is basically doing a live-action Star Wars-flavored Treasure Planet. Mm-hmm. Treasure Planet, of course, being an animated film from back in the day, which is a sci-fi update to Treasure Island. And if there's any company that would want to make references to Treasure Island, or Treasure Planet for that matter, which itself is a reference to Treasure Island, it would be Disney. So I love that they have all of these influences, as Derrick mentioned earlier, from various other properties. But Kh'ymm is Star Wars version of Archimedes, Merlin's pet owl. That's great stuff. And it gives me hope that we're going to get another new character who is essentially going to be the Merlin of this story, who is friends with or maybe works with Kh'ymm. So that'd be kind of cool.
That would be cool. Yeah, you and I were talking about it last week after the episode had dropped. We're like 3 letters off from having Silver and Jim because we've got Silvo and Whim. So it is not being incredibly subtle about the connections to Treasure Island.
Not at all. All right, well, we've got 2 more questions to go about this episode of Skeleton Crew, but before we jump into customized questions 4 and 5, let's take a quick break so that Kevin can talk to us about the other great shows here on the FPN.
Thank you for listening. We hope you're enjoying this podcast. Here are the other great shows on the Fandom Podcast Network. Culture Clash, where we discuss the latest in entertainment and pop culture. Blood of Kings, our show covering the entire Highlander universe. Couch Potato Theater, we celebrate our favorite movies. And Time Warp, our fandom flashback show discussing a year in movies and our favorite retro movie, TV, and pop culture topics. Good Evening, discussing all things Alfred Hitchcock. Hair Metal Podcast, we cover the rock metal music of the 80s and early 90s. Type 40, a Doctor Who podcast, discussing the time-traveling Doctor Who universe. Lethal Mullet, an action film podcast covering the 80s, 90s, and beyond. Also, check out the Lethal Mullet Network for more great podcasts. What a Piece of Junk, our Star Wars podcast. Making Treks, a Star Trek podcast with a deep dive into the final frontier. The Fandom Show, our Fandom Podcast Network live YouTube show discussing the hottest topics in fandom. The True Believers MCU podcast, discussing the Marvel Cinematic and Television Universe. Union Federation, our Star Trek and the Orville Show. And we're proud to welcome the BQN Network to the Fandom Podcast Network. Please visit our friends on the BQN Network, a Star Trek Universe podcast that also includes your favorite topics, movies, history, superheroes, and more. You can find the Fandom Podcast Network on YouTube. The Fandom Podcast Network is also on all major podcast platforms. The Fandom Podcast Network audio master feed is on Podbean at fpnet.podbean.com. You can find the Fandom Podcast Network on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. You can email us at fandompodcastnetwork@gmail.com. Thank you so much for listening, and remember, respect others and enjoy your fandom.
All right, thanks so much, Kevin. Everybody, please check out those other shows. They're pretty great. All right, time for question 4, which is the one that I put up. How many aliases does Jod have? Oh my Jod. How many names have we already heard for the guy? And we're only on episode 3, and he didn't even show up until the end of episode 2. Nathan, what do you got? How many aliases does he have? How many have we had so far?
Well, we've got Jod, we've got Captain Silvo, and we have Crimson Jack. So I know we've got at least 3.
And we got 8 episodes, so let's go with 8.
could be 8.
That would be amazeballs if they actually stick with it that he has a different name in every episode.
Yeah, so I think that Crimson Jack might be a title similar to the Dread Pirate Roberts in The Princess Bride. So that
franchising.
There may have been 3 different Crimson Jacks: the original in 1977, Jod, and then the new one in the current canon
Star Wars Marvel Comics.
Yeah. So that may be where he got that name, but I could see him taking on a bunch of different names. He may also be Lando and Jabba the Hutt and Ezra Bridger. Who knows?
Yes, Ezra. Oh my gosh, if he has Ezra Bridger as one of his aliases,
that would be hilarious.
So great.
Super meta right there. If at some point he claims to be Hondo, that would be cool too.
Yeah.
We don't have Hondo, but we've got Hondo. Like Wish.com Hondo.
Yeah. Wish it Timu Hondo. Good times. My answer to this is, how many does Jod have? As many as he needs. That is the real answer. And I wouldn't be surprised if he ever interacts with the kid's parents and uses a completely different name than we've heard in any other part of the story. Like Derrick said, he was going to have 8 aliases for 8 episodes. That's my prediction.
He might be good at the Jedi mind trick too. You know what I'm saying? So if he does that,
maybe he does a weird reverse Jedi mind trick where he reads people's minds and kind of is like a Star Wars version of identity theft. so that now he's an expert at impersonating you, so he can go somewhere and pretend to be you, and you're just one of his new aliases now.
Oh, no, see, I thought you were going more like the psychic paper that Doctor Who has, where he reads you and then he knows what lie you will accept.
Yes.
Ah, yeah.
It's like, oh yeah,
That'd be cool.
What you want to hear is that I am a
Crimson
merchant.
Jack.
Yeah, you want to hear that I'm Crimson Jack. You want to hear that I'm a merchant who was born on Alderaan and have been walking the galaxy since my planet exploded. You want to hear blah, blah, blah.
Yeah. Derrick, what do you think? You're sticking with 8 aliases for 8 episodes?
Yeah, I mean, we've been all kind of intermingling with this conversation, so I think, yeah. I mean, I hope it's a reoccurring episode. It's a new one, each one. I think that's funny. But I do hope that at some point we do get and again, I don't need his real name. Again, there's sometimes things can be left unanswered. That's okay.
Less is more. Less is more.
Yes, I'd rather him be kind of like the Mad Max of the character, right? Where he's just this really badass character, but at the end of the day, he's going to do the right thing. But it doesn't mean he's not going to take his fair share and plunder and do what he needs to do, right, to get by. So he's okay being that, right? So
I dig it. All right.
I was just going to say,
ahead,
I do hope that one of them ends up being pitched, though. So that could be a callback to his Rise of the Guardians character for Christmas time, where he's pitch black.
Oh, wow.
So that would be pretty meta story there. That if he has pitch,
that would be very meta as well.
So,
all right, Nathan, you've got question 5, and then we'll go ahead and wrap up the episode of the podcast here.
All right. So while I was watching the episode, I speculated that Jod's contact was going to be Maz Kanata. My girlfriend thought that it was going to be Sid. And then when the X-Wing showed up, I thought that Carson Blue was going to Carson Teva Blue one.
Yeah.
But I thought it was going to be Kh'ymm. And both of those turned out to be wrong. So what I want to know from you guys is, what do you think about that? Are you happy that these are new characters, or disappointed that we didn't get the cameos? And feel free not to limit it to just those two, but other possibilities as well.
Derrick, what do you think? Were you upset that they were new characters? Did you want the cameo?
Well, yeah. I mean, as we were talking offline, I did want the cameo of Kh'ymm or Carson, just because to me he would make a reoccurring thing of, like I said, I think he's the Stan Lee of the Star Wars universe, where he just appears in every series, right? And he obviously would just get those great moments and connecting all these pieces right into everything in the Mandoverse or Grogu verse or whatever you want to call it that we're in right now. So, no, I new characters, I'm okay with that. At first, I thought it might have been Maz when Kh'ymm was talking at first over the communicator or the comm. So, I kind of thought like, that sounds a lot like Maz. Is she going to be?
It did sound,
some type link to this, and then it's not. And I was like, okay, so I'm again fine with new characters because it is a large universe, and that's part of the problem we've had is everything needs to connect back. I'm glad that at this point Wim does not know about Luke Skywalker, does not know about the Clone Wars, right? Nothing needs to be tied to a Skywalker at this point. Having Jedi, that's perfectly fine because that's fairy tales and that's what they want to believe in. And then actually having where you're dealing with outlaws and stuff. And again, I would have been fine we could still have that to some degree. Jude Law's character, Jod, could be a hoax, right? Could not really be force sensitive at all. That could have been string because he hasn't done really anything else at this point. So he's just been eluding this whole time. Again, anytime you have Star Wars universe without any type of force sensitive people, the better, in my opinion, because again, that should be something that's unique. Not everybody should have it. So if they give Wim force powers at the end of this, I am going to be upset. I'm not saying I'm going to hate it, but I will be upset that he ends up being force sensitive at some point.
Yeah, I can see that. I echo your sentiments about I did want the cameos from those two characters, but not getting them increases the size of the galaxy, and I like that overall. Plus, Kh'ymm was such a cool new character. and a reference to, Archimedes. Come on, that's great. And definitely felt like one of these fantastical characters from a 1980s kids movie, which is the whole Amblin Entertainment atmosphere that we know that the Skeleton Crew production team is aiming for. And so they just nailed it. They hit it out of the park with this Kh'ymm character. She feels like something from a 1980s kids movie, but the good kind of stuff, not the McDonald's product placement from Mac and Me. 1980s kids movie, and so I really like her.
If they kill a kid, KB, because she's got a handicap, then we've gone down a really weird 80s rabbit hole at this point.
We have, yeah, and that would be terrible. Anyway,
push her down into the mob of pirates just shooting her.
Yeah. Anyways, but no, I would have liked Carson to be there though, because I like that connective tissue. But it might would have pulled me out of the episode just a little bit to be like, oh, look, there's Carson. It's kind of like when you watch a J.J. Abrams film and, oh, look, there's
Lens
well,
play.
dang it, now I can think of Snap
Wexley. Yeah.
Dang it, now I can't think of the actor's name. That's gonna drive me insane.
I know who you're talking about though. Snap Wexley was played by
Greg Grunberg. I'll be all, there's Greg Grunberg. This must be a J.J. Abrams film. Yeah. So yeah, at this point, Carson is like Dave Filoni's version of Greg Grunberg. You're like, oh look, Uncle Iroh is here, so this must be a Dave Filoni production. Anyway, so yeah, I like the question though, Nathan. That's a good idea. So what's your answer to it, Nathan?
Similar to what you guys said, in the moment, I was disappointed that we didn't get to see Maz or Sid. I thought it might be Maz when I heard the voice, and then we saw the claw, and I thought that might be Sid. Because when I went back to look at it, I could tell, okay, this is a bird claw, not a lizard claw. But in the moment, I couldn't tell well enough to say, well, that can't be Sid. But then it turned out to be a new character, and later I thought, yeah, that's actually better. Because when we get the same characters over and over again, it does make the galaxy seem small. And it seems like too much of a confluence of events of, oh, yeah, this person just happens to always be in the right place.
What a coincidence.
And that's actually why I'm glad we didn't see Carson. He already seems to just show up wherever important things are happening. It would be a little too much for him to happen to be here as well, I think. So I think it's good in the long run. And that's why I'm also kind of glad that we're not getting Hondo.
Right.
Would I like to see him in live action? Yes, absolutely. Is there a purpose to him being in this show?
Yes.
I'm not sure that there is other than him showing up. I mean, you could argue that this is the best show for him since we do have pirates. But I don't know. So yeah, in the end, I'm glad that we didn't get the cameos. I'm glad that we got new characters.
I just would have wanted Hondo though, just because we would have known where he's at this point in time, though, because we really don't know what he's up to at this point.
Yeah, well,
he should be the mayor of Pirate Town,
or just
he is the king of Port Borgo.
Yes, or the king of the pirates, and they have to find the One Piece.
Not king, just around.
All right, well, it's time for Derrick's favorite part of the show, and that is what Star Wars t-shirts are we wearing this week? And I'm going to go first. My beautiful bride let me borrow her epic Star Wars pinball shirt that we got at Star Wars Celebration in Chicago all the way back in 2019. And so we loved the convention. I'm so happy that I actually got to go to a Star Wars Celebration at least once in my life. I'm hoping to go to another one someday, but it was cool that I got to go with my best friend and my wife and the rest of our crew, and we had a blast. And this is such a great shirt that merges classic Star Wars with classic pinball for the convention. I mean, the shirt designs that they had that year were inspired. That's also where I got my beloved WrestleMania shirt, which was in reference to the anniversary of Episode 2, Attack of the Clones, and Zam Wessel, and it was done as a WrestleMania homage. I mean, it was Star Wars with wrestling? This should not have happened, but not only did it happened the one time that I got to go to Celebration Chicago. It was meant to be. Nathan,
I
what
have
Star
to
Wars shirt do
say,
you have on?
before I talk about my shirt, that pinball shirt is Wizard.
So Wizard, Annie.
And that joke
Who
works
are you
on
referencing?
multiple levels.
Who are you referencing? That's it. I'm putting Derrick out the airlock. Where's that button? All right.
All right. Well, I've got a new shirt on today. This is a shirt that I recently got from Her Universe. I got it at the same time that I got that jacket that I showed off last time. This is a Captain Rex shirt. You guys know that I love Captain Rex. I wish they had fives because I actually like fives a little better than
That would be
Rex.
cool.
But
Bright yellow.
he's not. No,
Or
he's not.
orange.
No,
Isn't
he
orange.
No, he also does blue.
Oh, okay.
He's part of the 501st.
Oh,
He's
Cody's
part-
orange, right? Cody's.
Yeah, you're thinking Cody. But this is Rex. It's got the helmet. It's got the tally marks that he does that are also on the jacket that I wear over this sometimes. Of course, I've been wearing that one recently, but I still have my Rex jacket, so it is cool to wear both of them together. But yeah, it doesn't really have anything on the back. It's just got the white stripe. Captain Rex. Can't go wrong.
Good times. Good times. All right, Derrick, what you got?
So with this week's episode theme of "That's Not What Jedi Do," I had to wear this one.
Oh, cute.
That is
Chibi
no
Ahsoka.
Jedi.
Yep, she is no Jedi. That's awesome.
And then even when she was still doing things that the Jedi wouldn't do, right? So,
Yeah, that's true.
No, she was doing things her own way.
because the Sky Guy.
Well,
Bad
that
influence.
is an
Like, where
Yes.
did you learn to disobey orders like that? From watching you? Oh yeah.
good times. Good times. Well, if you guys out there want your own cool "What a Piece of Junk" T-shirt, or mousepad, or coffee mug, or any other neato mosquito merchandise from our show or other Fandom Podcast Network shows, please head over to tpublic.com and search up Fandom Podcast Network in the user bar, and you'll find all sorts of stuff that you suddenly realize you cannot live without. All right, Nathan, let folks know where they can find us out there on the internet.
Absolutely. You can find us on the Podbean app. We are FPNet on the Podbean app. And you can also find us anywhere your pods are cast. That includes Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Google Play, and of course on YouTube. On Facebook, we're What a Piece of Junk, a Star Wars podcast. You can email us at whatapieceofjunkpod@gmail.com. On Twitter/X, we are at What Wars. And on Instagram, you can find the entire Fandom Podcast Network at Fandom Podcast Network. And wherever you find us, we would love for you to leave us a review. And Derrick, could you tell us why we would love for people to leave us reviews?
It would be great for folks to, after they're done listening, whether, like you mentioned, Nathan, that they were downloading it or streaming it, whatever platform, leave us a review, because we need to be able to get to At Attin and figure out where it's going to do. And what that cost is we're going to have to go through Kh'ymm. And I heard she really likes apples, so more Apple reviews, the better.
Yes, absolutely. And believe me, finding At Attin is really, really tough. But what isn't really tough is getting feedback from you guys. And we hope that we do get some feedback at one or more of the places that Derrick and Nathan have just told you about. But until next time, we want to thank our listeners for joining us on this episode of the show. And please always remember to respect each other and always respect each other's fandom. All right, Nathan. Punch it.